Okay, welcome to the shop, friends. Now we've got a dining room table for this build. 9 foot by about 38, 36, and we got some scallop details on the apron and some tricky turn legs to do. So right off the bat, I just want to thank SimpliSafe for sponsoring this video. More on that soon. Remember, there is no safe like SimpliSafe. We're getting started here with the leg blanks. So I'm going to make these out of some 12-quarter walnut. I try really hard to not glue up leg blanks. If I can get it out of solid, that's the way to go. And this is some nice 12-quarter walnut here I've got that I'm working with. I don't normally dress the wood when I'm going to the lathe, but in this circumstance we have a square, about 5 inches of square. Here's the CAD modeling for it, and then it transitions into that turning, which I really think is going to be a cool detail. I'm excited about it, but also very tricky to do. Let me walk you through. We had 3 designs proposed for this. A little bit of a decision, a little challenging making decisions on this one, and that's okay. This first one was the Biedermeier style leg, kind of a German style leg, which, you know, I think the client decided no. And then we kind of went off on a sidetrack to this style table, and I didn't like, we decided no on it because of the base would be obtrusive with chairs, and this is what we landed on. The same apron design as the first design, but different legs with these turn legs. And I was excited about the turn legs because I actually ended up going out to the client's house and seeing some of her furniture, and she had a bed, a really cool bed that had some turning details, and I thought, you know, I think it'd be really cool to do this square. I love the square to round transition, and then a nice little kind of interesting taper there with a little bottom detail on the leg. So we're gonna head to the lathe. Just got to get these cut to length, and you know, I've got four legs obviously, and I ended up doing one test run on an extra piece, and I did struggle with these. I did struggle because that transition, your tool can catch, you can break out and chip those corners on that square. This is the finished part that I'm going off of, and you can kind of see the detail. I didn't actually intend to shoot this here. I was trying to shoot my layout, but I put the camera on the wrong part. But it's good because you guys can see what we're going to go for and how that transition is going to look. And what I'm talking about, the challenge, is just that crisp transition. You can really chip those corners out. So we're going to start with this skew to kind of break those fibers between the hard corners and going down to the turning. I'm going to step over about 5/8 and just cut down to the final diameter of that taper. You can kind of see up in the finished part up above. We're just kind of shooting for where that transition ends into the round. And then I'm going to go ahead and just rough it out. Get all the square parts done. You know, a lot of times I'll octagon apart to make this much quicker, but obviously can't do that here because we've got that flat up top. So I've been using this bigger gouge for roughing, and I really like it. You can go pretty fast with it. It's pretty aggressive and works great. Okay, so before we jump in and do this transition, let's talk about today's sponsor, SimpliSafe.
All right, interesting thing about SimpliSafe for me. I have 3 systems, 2 that I pay monitoring for the shop and for the house, and then 1 for my RV. I honestly was thinking the other day how weird it would feel to not have their systems. And I say this specifically for their outdoor cameras. I have a doorbell camera, and I have 3 outdoor cameras on my property between my shop and the house. I can monitor anything going on, and I get notifications on my phone. That's what I love about SimpliSafe. I know when someone's at my front door. I know when my kids are out by the pool. I know when someone's pulled up to my shop. I know if someone's near my garage. And anytime those cameras detect any motion, I get a notification on my app. And so for me personally, having SimpliSafe for the last 6-7 years has become just kind of a part of my lifestyle. It's one of the few things that I really like about technology, is being able to monitor my home. Now, I also have indoor cameras, which I use a little bit less, but you know, I found a great functional use for the shop cameras. I can put one on the CNC, so while we were carving that apron detail, I'm able to sit there and check if I'm in the house eating lunch, or at night if I'm not in the shop, but I got the CNC running. I can check in using SimpliSafe's indoor camera. SimpliSafe has just become such a key integration into our home and into my shop business, and how it helps cover and protect our home. And SimpliSafe has really beefed up their security system with their Active Guard outdoor protection. You know, a traditional security system notifies you after someone has broken into your home, the alarm has gone off. Generally, they have had the chance to steal belongings and get out. With Active Guard protection, SimpliSafe's outdoor camera uses AI to recognize an intruder before it ever breaks into your home. The camera knows if someone suspicious is on your property and immediately notifies the monitoring system, where they can then communicate to that person through the camera or call the police and dispatch the police to your property before the break-in ever happens. And plans are pretty affordable, starting around $1 a day with no hidden fees. Now, if you're a homeowner like me, I would just highly recommend you get cameras on your property. And SimpliSafe system is the best option. And the great thing is, SimpliSafe is offering my viewers 50% off their security system when they sign up for a professional monitoring plan. And you get your first month free. Just go to simplisafe.com/Andy Rawls to customize yours. Remember, there's no safe like SimpliSafe. You can try SimpliSafe risk-free for 60 days. If you don't like it, you can return it and get a full refund. So there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't give it a shot. You get a huge discount. And if you don't like it, you can just send it back and get your money back. The link is in the description. Go get your system now. Let's get back to turning this leg.
All right, so we start this with a small gouge. We go the bevel, it's hard to explain, but we're gonna go up to kind of a vertical cut going in, and then we're gonna rotate the tool back down to flat as we go through this curve and just slowly work that in. And where it's really hard is that first starting cut when you got the tool vertical, because it can grab a hold of the wood and pull it back into those fibers and chip them out really bad. So I'm trying really hard just to hold the tool steady and just take nice light cuts and get this nice clean smooth transition all the way around right to where we pare down to that final diameter. And you can see can't ask for much better than that. We've got a few tool marks in there, but we're cutting on ingrain. And we're getting nice clean cuts. So I'm going to try here to get one light pass to kind of clean that up and come right down and get this step off. And I'm actually pretty pumped because I screwed a few of these up, and this one I nailed it. I got it really good. So we're going to move down to the foot of the leg, do this little bottom ring down here. Start off by paring down to diameter at the bottom of that ring and the top of it, and then I'm going to work this taper below the ring, and then we'll shape the ring last. So I'll get this taper done and then move up to the body of the leg. And this is my favorite part. You know, so I really like the lathe because so much of it is just kind of the eye and you know, kind of fine-tuning this taper by hand. I don't duplicate. I just kind of look at it and kind of shape it by hand, and I think it's fun. And so you can tell here, take a note of my body. My body's doing the movement, not my arms. So as I cut that taper, my whole body is moving that tooling. Final thing we're going to do is come in and, well, it's not the final, but we're going to go ahead and come in here and shape the radius on this little ring and make it nice and pretty. And then I've got to work this top taper up here. It's kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It gets skinny, tapers to fat, and then tapers back down to skinny. I think it's a real interesting shape and kind of almost a modern style, Danish modern. So an interesting play on that, and cool leg, I think. So before we go to mortises, I'm going to take all my flat spaces and just hit them with the hand plane, get them nice and smooth and pretty, and then we'll start laying out to go to the mortiser. So before we go to the mortiser, I want to walk you through this kind of layout process. This is important, very important part, because I've cut many mortises on the wrong face. First thing I'm going to do is set all the legs together where they would be, and I'm going to put, really what I'm looking for here is to put any defects towards the inside of the table. There are a few legs, like I mentioned, that I did get a chip out and had to repair. So I'm going to try to put those into the middle so we're not going to see those, and then the show edges are going to go to the outside. And then I'm going to, I also had a few pieces with little knots, so I wanted to try to hide those. I'm going to mark a square along the inside. You don't kind of see that square, and I'm going to number each piece. So that's going to help me know where the mortise goes. And I'm going to leave those legs in that position, and as I go to the mortiser, I'll just pull the leg from that layout, mortise it, and then put it back. And it just really helps me not mess up, because many times, like I said, I've cut a mortise in the wrong face, and it's really frustrating. And at this point, these parts have gotten pretty expensive. You know, quite a bit of hours time on the lathe turning. To make a mistake here would be costly. So taking our time. So the mortiser cuts out a 1/2 inch mortise here, all the way as deep as I can go, so that the two tenons will meet and then create a 45 inside that leg. And I lay that out before so I know how deep to go, and you can see that mortise there. We'll go and do one more here. So I'm going to cut the lowest point of the mortise. I'm going to cut one end, and then I'll come back and cut the next furthest away, the opposite end, and then I'll just take out the waist in the middle. Generally, I leave 5/8 to 3/4 from the top of the leg, and a lot of times I'll do a haunch. In this particular case, I left a 1/2 inch, which is cutting it pretty close. You run the risk of blowing out that end grain, but as we get further along in this build, I'm going to add a piece back on top up there. That's a 1/2 inch thick. So I just kind of went this route. I think it worked out fine. I was actually, when I dry assembled this and put it together, I didn't have any issues with any breakout, so I feel pretty good about it. Okay, mortise is cut. It's always a good relief to get through all that work without a mistake. So we're going to turn to the tabletop. I don't generally show a lot of milling of material, but this is a different way I mill, and really the best way in my shop, because I have the S4S machine. This particular top, we kind of decided to get some wood with some more character. So I actually went to the hardwood dealer and picked out wood that out of the stack that was a little knotty and had a little bit of figure and character to it. And if I get boards that are under 7.5 inches, I can run them through this S4S, and it'll surface them all 4 sides. They'll go in rough. They'll come out clean and surfaced. It's very fast. It cuts the milling time down much faster. I mean, less than half. Now, the couple things is, if the board's twisted, bowed, something of that nature, I do have to joint before. This S4S is not going to take a lot of bow out. But if it's dialed in, it'll leave edge joints on the edges that are good enough for glue up. So it's nice. I can send my boards through here and immediately go into my glue up and not have to do any fine tuning. So this is a huge time saver, this machine. I don't always use it because a lot of times I have wide boards on tabletops, and I'm restricted to the 7.5 width. So you can see that board coming out there, nice and clean, all finished up. Got a little bit of miss on the bottom, but we'll put that to the bottom of the table. I'm gonna go ahead and use the domino on this. I don't do this to every tabletop, but when I have, quite a few boards, I don't know how many boards we have here, maybe 6 or 7. I want to use this to help get them aligned. And sometimes when they come out of the S4S, they can be a little bowed. And so it's just going to help me get everything lined up. If I have a tabletop with 3 boards, 4 boards, I'll generally get my joints dialed in really good and just go straight to the clamps. I can sand pretty quickly a 16th to an 1/8 off on my big sander after the glue is dried and level everything off pretty quick. So if I didn't have the big sander, I would probably always use the Festival Domino, because I would get really good even joints consistently, or a good level tabletop, I guess, once I glue it up. All right, somewhat awkward, not fun glue up here on the floor. Judd's gonna roll in, the boys are gonna roll in. This is summertime in the shop for me. My shop is on my property, and the kids are out of school, so they are in here a lot. And you're gonna see me, they're gonna come in asking if they can help. I'm gonna shut that down. I feel kind of bad.
Yeah, but not right now. What? Not right now.
They did catch me in the middle of a glue up. Not the best time for a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old to be helping me out, but I try really hard to get them involved the best I can. I'm busy trying to keep up with the schedule, so obviously they're going to slow me down, but I want him in there. And Judd loves to just watch. I love this about him. He'll just sit here and watch. He's going to figure out kind of what I'm doing, and he's going to try to help me here in a second. He's got that mind where he can watch me do something and say, oh yeah, I see what he's doing here. So he's trying to knock that together, because he sees me trying to put these together, and I'm having a hard time with it. I'm not kidding, it's fighting me a little bit.
Fighting you, bud.
It's always a little stressful with glue ups. If you're a woodworker, furniture maker, you gotta move. Here he is giving me a hand again, and then he's gonna jump on the clamp here in a second and help me tighten it down. Finally get all these boards together. It's gonna make an interesting tabletop. It's gonna be nice looking. I think we went at a 6/4 with this, so we're gonna finish at about 1 3/8, a little above 1 1/4 once we sand it.
Be strong. Watch your finger. Okay,
it's on, alright? It's gonna be loud, you might cover your ears.
All right, with that all glued up, get it leveled out in the clamps, we're going to talk some about my process for the aprons, the scallop on the
We
apron.
got a tabletop. Okay, quick little shift of gears here. I normally don't do this, but the CNC can be very boring to film. It doesn't make great content in my opinion. So instead of showing you the action on it, I'm going to explain what we're doing. This is the scallop. This apron just came off the CNC here, and you can see that 2-inch wide scallop going down the length of this. Now the short aprons were really easy because we were able to fit those on the bed of the lathe. The bed of the lathe is a 60 by 60. I'm saying lathe, I don't know why. The CNC is a 60 by 60. And so these are 91, they hang off. So I have to tile it. So what that means is I create a perimeter in the CAM software, which is what writes the G code for the CNC. It tells it to cut within that perimeter. And then I move the part to the next perimeter and I stack them right next to each other. And ideally, if you get everything lined up, it'll pick up right where it left off. It's never really that easy to do, but I'm actually pretty pleased with how this first one came out. There's just some slight issues with it, but for the most part, it's really good. So it runs off of 1, 2, 3, 4 programs. I just finished the first 2 on this back apron that's on the bed of the lathe, the CNC, sorry. It's a roughing, it runs a flat surfacing and then it roughs out the contour, the scoop here. And now what I'm going to do is fire up and run the really long program that runs for about 3.5 hours that does just a really slow parallel pass, really small tooling that really refines this shape and this carving. So that's where the time is in this. And once I get done with that one, we'll shift that whole part forward on the bed of the CNC and we can start with the second section and hopefully they all match up and works good. So that is kind of a quick overview of how this works. A lot of work in Fusion 360 to kind of dial this in and figure it out. A lot of test runs, and I'm happy so far that I've gotten through 3 of my 4 aprons without big incidents. So let's knock on wood and let's finish this last one.
Okay, so we've got all the scallops done. I mean, that took several days of work on the CNC. They did not come out perfect with that tiling. So here I'm trying to line up that shoulder. I'm going to have a little bit shorter tenons on a few, and this is kind of unfortunate because each tenon is going to be cut a little bit different to make it work. What I should have done is left, you know, a good 3 inches off the ends of these, and I could have trimmed them down and dialed it all in. But in this case, I've got to come in and cut each tenon at its own setting. So I can't really use stops and all that stuff. It's a bit of a pain. So it took me a little while. I was a little annoyed with the process, but we got it done. This is my shaper with a White Hill tooling cutter block that I can go over the top on. Really nice. I can cut big long tenons on these. These tenons are only, I think, 2.5, something of that nature. But I always cut them as long as I can fit in the leg, depending on how big our leg is. Get the maximum glue surface, gives us the most strength. So once we get the cheeks cut, we've got a little section of waste here to take off, which I'm going to come first to the small Oliver. It's going to be cool because we're going to do the short aprons on the small Oliver, which was built in 1926, and then we'll switch over to the big Oliver, built in 1925, to do the longer aprons because we got much bigger table surface, a little easier to manage. I just love having this little bandsaw though right here in my bench area to handle just a little task like this. And you might notice the contour cut that cut the bottom of the scallops. There's still some work to do to clean that up. I'm actually going to rabbit that and take all that out. So we're going to do a little rabbit on the back side of that apron. And I'm actually not going to show it in the video, unfortunately, but you'll notice it as we get further along. You'll see that rabbit. But it'll take all that extra waste there and just make it go away. Okay, switching over to the big saw. 3 foot by 3 foot table here, much easier to manage. I don't have the space around the saw to do the returning cut. Can only do vertical cut going into the shoulder. So we'll do that, and then we'll head to the bench and get the handsaw and do the other cut in the vise. There's also some chisel work to do in here to clean it up, make it a nice clean. I mean, I want that shoulder to come, there's about 1/4 of an inch of shoulder below that tenon, and we've got to work, you know, that scallop kind of cuts up, so there's this tight little angle where it hits the leg. It's really not easy to see, but I still want to chisel that little 1/4 inch shoulder nice and clean and make sure everything is level, and it's going to shoulder up well when we glue it up. Okay, the least favorite part of this whole process, this table, is the sanding. All these little scallops. You know, even though I ran that parallel cut on the CNC, you've got little toolpath marks that you've got to get rid of. And it's just, I got these little abrasive wheels that can go on my drill that really work well. And I can work, they do catch, and I'm trying really hard here not to round over the flat at each scallop, which I ended up doing. I came back with a block plane and kind of worked each flat down to get a sharp edge there again. But you know, sanding this by hand would take hours, and even doing it this way takes hours. But doing it by hand would take multiple more hours. And so this is a time saver, and it works well. And I just slowly work through each scallop and make it nice and pretty. If you don't sand these well, it just doesn't come out good. It'll look bad. But once I got everything sanded, I'm going to pre-finish parts. This is something I do pretty normally. It helps with glue cleanup, helps save time. It also, you know, I use water-based finishes, so we're gonna get kind of more in depth on the finish on this table, which I don't normally do. But this is a shellac seal coat, and it'll really make that walnut pop. It brings the color of the walnut out. If you just put water-based on walnut, you really don't get that color. It's a little bit different look. Water-based doesn't quite make it pop. So I can pre-seal every part with this shellac. It's de-waxed. Shellac is an amazing finish. You can put anything over the top of it. It can seal off anything. Having a gallon of that seal coat shellac in the shop, I think, is a must. It's just a great product. It's not cheap. I won't lie. I think it cost me $80 a gallon, but it's really useful. Another great thing here is, as I seal it, I can find any spots that aren't sanded well and go back and resand it and just reseal it. Gluing up with epoxy, giving me some time to work here. That's really the main reason. It just helps slow things down, and I can clean it up really easily. And if I don't get it cleaned up all the way, it's not going to affect the finish like a tight bond would. Get the clamps on it, make sure everything's level. I let that sit for a little bit, but I was a little impatient on this one, so I left the clamps on and went and did the long aprons, which worked fine. I mean, the only disadvantage you have in doing this is it's harder to get a good clamp on the length of those aprons. I just clamped it over the top and just made sure that everything was, all the legs were not splayed and everything was in the right alignment. And it's always fun at this point because you can see all the work and all these parts start to come together. It's exciting. This is a little additional cross piece we're going to put in for support. It's pretty necessary, I think. You know, just gives a little bit more structure to that base, helps hold the tabletop down. And I've already cut dados in the aprons, so this is just a little, I don't know, you could call it a stub tenon, a little spline of some sort that's just going to pop into those dados, and we'll glue that all together, and this will add some strength to that apron, or to that table base. This one, just use Type Bond 2. You know, Type Bond 2 I think is a pretty solid glue joint. If you have another advantage to epoxy is if you have slightly loose joints, epoxy is a great gap filler. Type Bond 2 is not good at gap filling. So that's another case for epoxy if your joints are just a little loose. But in this case, you can tell by having used the mallet that this is a good fit. We don't need to fill gaps. You shouldn't want to fill gaps either. Sometimes it happens. Mic check. We're doing good, I think. Okay, awkwardly getting the clamp on here. Just trying to pull this together. You know, another reason I wanted to put this on is just those scallops kind of thinned the apron out, you know, where they go deep. It's not that bad. I think it's maybe an inch thick there, or 7/8. So the apron does have the ability to kind of move and flex, so that'll help prevent that. This is going to be the only big mistake I made on this table. These are the top trim pieces that are going to go on above the aprons. I kind of mentioned these earlier when we were cutting the mortises. I roughed these out to length. I didn't have long pieces of walnut. I kind of got down to the last bit of walnut. So I had to, on the long aprons, I had to splice them with the miter joint, and you can tell here, too short. I'm kind of wondering, how did I do this? You know, I was against the wall with this one. I really needed to get it done, kind of get caught up on my calendar, and so I was pumped that I wasn't making any mistakes. It was a super smooth build. I was really happy with it. This is not a big mistake. I mean, I can go back and mill parts in 20 minutes. So here we are, round 2. Milled new parts. I'm gonna go in and get these glued, and I'll go ahead and nail them on. Biggest reason I use the nail gun is to just help keep it aligned. That way it's not sliding around when you put a clamp on it with the glue. I do, before I glue these on, so we have it sealed with the shellac. I've got a 320 grit on here, a little sander thing on my drill, and I'm going to go through and sand each scallop now. Just sand the clear, the shellac, and smooth it out and make it feel nice, and I'll get it ready for a top coat here soon. Way too much glue here. Don't know what I was thinking. Really just made a mess. That was not good.
Darn it, Andy.
All right, we throw some clamps on, let that sit, and then I'll do a little bit of sanding to kind of level everything out and make it look nice. Okay, so let's talk about the finish. Like I said, I don't normally share a lot on my finish process, but I thought it'd be cool here. I'm making a custom stain using a base coat from Target Coatings and then Mix-All tinting. And you can see here, this is where we're at with the sealer on the tabletop. It doesn't look bad, but there's some light spots in here you can see that I want to blend. I want to make it a little bit less obvious, a little bit less contrast. And this is not a hard process. So first thing I'm going to do is take that custom mix stain that kind of matches the darker color of that walnut, and I'm going to spray a complete coverage over the top of this table with that stain. This is a water-based stain. Since we have the shellac sealer on there, it's not going to penetrate very deep into the wood at all. It's more going to sit into that shellac finish, and it won't go as dark. So it's a real light stain here. And what I'm going to do is wipe this off. You can already tell it's making a difference. It's helped blend things. It's not perfect yet. The tricky part with this stain is wiping it. It dries fast and it gets sticky, so you've got to move pretty quick here and get a lot of the stain off. And then I'll let it sit for probably overnight. I mean, it's a water-based stain, so it's going to be dry pretty quick, but it does raise the grain a little bit. Okay, so once I get it wiped, I'm going to come in and I'm going to turn the flow way down on my gun. So just a little bit of stains coming through, and I'm just kind of airbrushing almost these really light, sappy areas. You can see that's really kind of, I don't want to take away the light color completely, but I want to blend it a little bit. And I'm going to do this little spot here and just, make it less obvious. And I think it looks much nicer. So, since it is water-based, we are going to raise the grain some here, even though we have a sealer on it. So you can already see the difference here. There's a shot. It looks much better. There's not quite as much contrast. That light feels more like a darker walnut. In my opinion, looks a lot better. I'll let this dry overnight. It is a water-based stain, so it's going to dry fast. It's not like oil-based where you got to wait 2 or 3 days. This is going to dry fast, and I'm going to sand it with 320 grit to get. But basically, the only reason I'm sanding is where we've raised the grain. In some areas, if you ever use water-based, some areas are going to raise more than others, and you got to knock that down. Really light sanding. I'm not taking any of the color off. It's all dried in the finish, so it's not going anywhere. And then I'm going to come in with my conversion varnish from Target Coatings and do a light coat. A lot of people might call this a wash coat. It's just not super dry, but it's a dry coat. So generally you go for 2 mils of wet thickness with this product. I'm going way less than that. Got my flow turned down. I'm moving pretty quick, just shooting that light coat. And then that's just going to help with adhesion. If I shoot a really heavy coat over that stain, sometimes you might have an issue with adhesion. Likely not, but this is just a little bit more of a guarantee that that's not going to be an issue. So I've fast forward, we've got probably 2 coats at this point, and I've let them dry, and I'm going to sand back with the orbital on 320 here and just level everything. I think this is an important step with film finishes. This will help. So I'll come back. This is the final coat. Always a little nerve-wracking. I'm going to start with the edges because it isn't easy. Sometimes you've got to shoot an even 2 mil wet film thickness on this, and if you get a dry spot, you got to do it again, and it happens. So I've got the lights turned down a little bit so I can see my reflection. I've got a nice clean gun shooting really nice here, and I've got about a 50% overlap between strokes here. So I'm going to get this nice wet build up on the table, even across the whole top, and it'll dry beautifully and it looks amazing. And once this fully cures, it is very protective. Pretty much nothing you got to do. I mean, you don't need maintenance on this finish. It's rock hard and very protective. So a great finish. It just got to get this last coat nailed down and get that nice wet film across the whole thing. Okay, last order of business is to get this thing ready for delivery. Get the top attached. I try to deliver it with the top attached, although it's usually backfires when you got to take the top off to get it to the front door. But for this one, we didn't have to do that. The buttons are a little bit different on this table. Buttons are what hold the top to the base. Generally, I make mortises in the apron for the button. But since I added that top piece on top of the apron, that 1/2 inch thick piece, I carried it off the front of the apron and the back, so it's almost the size of the leg, and it provided a little place for me to clip onto with the buttons, and it worked great. It was cool. Did a little different button design on this one, which you're not able to really see in the video, but it is a pleasant surprise. I always try to use brass screws. For a long time I used construction screws, and it always felt so wrong. A lot of people are scared of brass screws because they break, especially with modern day impacts. But if you drill the proper pilot holes and use some lubricant like some wax, you shouldn't have any issues. And these are number 10 brass screws, so they're a little bit more heavy duty. Okay, so I got a few final shots here of the table. Not great, unfortunately. I will post some in the YouTube post section, some photos of it in this final resting point. And I do have some posts over on Instagram, but I know a lot of you guys don't use Instagram, so I want to make sure you get to see those. So those will go into my posts. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Fun build. The client loved it. This one actually got a lot of positive feedback from a lot of my followers over on Instagram. I think the ladies really liked it because of that scallop detail. So fun build, great stuff. Leave a comment, let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time.